And that was one of the ways. Have we got Sebastian Gorka? Excellent. Let us bring on Sebastian Gorka and talk to him about what happened next. Sebastian Gorka is a military and intelligence analyst, Fox News strategist, and former deputy assistant to President Trump. He's also the author of the New York Times bestseller, Defeating Jihad, and he is at Cpack. Are you at Cpack?
I am. I'm hiding in the green room, Drew, to do this interview with you.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. They never invite me to Cpack, but the one time I was there, I enjoyed it. It's always a really nice event. It's beautiful. It's nice to see all the young conservatives show up. It gives you hope. So this morning, President Trump tweeted out that he said, I'll be strongly pushing comprehensive background checks, something I think most of us support. We want this. He says an emphasis on mental health. He wants to end the sale of bump stock, something the NRA supports. I don't know how useful that will be. But he also says, I want to raise the age of buying a gun to 21, something the NRA will never support and most people don't support. Is he going soft? Do you worry about Donald Trump in this regard? Do you think he's going soft on this issue?
Look, as an avid pro-gun Second Amendment guy, not really, because he's hit the nail on the head. You've outlined it. It's clear from your autobiography. It's even clear from your fictional work like The Kingdom that you understand evil exists.
Yeah.
Evil isn't just something in fairy tales. It walks the earth. You can never on this earth. You will never eradicate it. That's what communists said they were doing, and look what they did. So, what we have to have here is a realistic approach to how you deal with that evil. And it's not the gun. It's not the inanimate object. When the president says the mental health issue is key here, he's absolutely right. There's no legislation that will stop a terrorist. There's no legislation that will stop a bank robber. And guess what? There's no legislation which will stop a mentally impaired individual who's paranoid or schizophrenic from killing other people unless we do what? Have a system that identifies them, that helps them, that reaches out to them. Since the 1970s, Drew, thanks to the left and to actually a Supreme Court decision, it is almost impossible to adjudicate somebody as mentally deficient, so they must be institutionalized.
Right.
It's basically impossible. Look at New York, right? Look at the streets of New York. Look at the beggars. A lot of those people would be where? They would be having 3 square meals in a mental institution, being helped, but you can't put them there for more than 72 hours. And some of them are what? Kids who need help. They'll steal a gun, they'll steal a car. It bears repeating. In France, 82 people were murdered by a man who stole a truck.
Right.
What legislation is going to stop that?
No, you
Nothing.
can't.
So,
yeah.
And sorry, just to finish your key question. You have to understand something about the president the left will never believe to their dying death, to their dying breath. He's a compassionate man. He is a massively compassionate man. He loves this country. He's an outsider. He's an iconoclast. But when he sees those children who are victims, who've survived, it pulls on his heartstrings. But at the same time, he's a pragmatist. And I think that's what his tweets talk to. It's not about fracturing the base. It's about a pragmatic response to a crisis, not in gun rights, but in mental health.
I completely agree with this, and I think the crisis in mental health and homelessness it's insane that that's not what they're covering at this point. But I want to ask you one more question about this, and then I want to move into some of the news that's coming out about the Obama administration, what they did while they were in office. But I want to ask you one more thing. One got the feeling with Ronald Reagan that if his entire cabinet had been stocked with communists, he still would have been against the Soviet Union. Now, you left the Trump administration feeling that Donald Trump was being surrounded by people who were not maybe as supportive of his agenda as you were. You thought that maybe that they would come back and some of these people would leave. I don't see that happening. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you worry that he is not as grounded and not grounded enough in principle so that he can be swayed by the wrong voices?
I don't, because he has a truly preternatural instinct to do the right thing. And I'll give you an example. And if I shared this last time, I apologize, but maybe I didn't. I had a cabinet member tell me, and I'm not going to say who it was, that on the Jerusalem decision to move our embassy, only 3 members of the president's cabinet supported him. 3 members.
Right.
And at the end of the day, despite what everybody else was telling him, it's going to be a disaster, there'll be crisis, our embassies will be in flames, the president said, you know what? I promised the American people, I promised our friends Israel, oh, and by the way, it's the right thing to do morally, so I'm going to do it. It's stunning. I mean, it's truly stunning. So that's why at the end of the day, however deep and broad the swamp is, I have faith in this man because his instincts are good, Drew. You've made the point that he learns on the job. He does that. He learns on the job. But his instincts, his default instincts are almost always right.
You know, you've always been such an eloquent defender of this administration that I hate to tee you up. Like, I hate to give you questions in your wheelhouse, but I can't help it. I mean, I've been watching the revelations that have been coming out about the Obama administration, and on top of that, I've been watching the press working to suppress the information, to keep the public from learning what happened during the Obama administration. I now think it's perfectly fair to call it Obamagate. The way. What do you feel, without overstating it? I mean, don't push it. Just what do you feel we know at this point about the way Obama used the levers of power to attack Donald Trump during the campaigns?
It's so difficult where to begin because we can go back to the IRS. We can talk about all kinds of things.
Yeah.
If we just talk about FISA-gate, and I agree, Drew, we should be calling this Obamagate. This is the bare minimum. What we know is Hillary Clinton basically paid for and bought an illegal surveillance warrant to spy on an American who was part of the opposition campaign. That's what she did through her buddies at DOJ, at the FBI, who are political appointees. These aren't agents. Most of these people are lawyers who were put there by Obama at the highest level. And she spent $12 million to buy opposition research that was from Russia. This is massive. This is Russian fantasy material that was taken to a secret court. And at the court, the FBI and the DOJ signed off at director level, hid the exculpatory evidence that this is opposition research, and a surveillance warrant was issued. Legally, that's perjury and abuse of power. She bought a warrant to spy on an American, which is fine in a banana republic, but not in America. You know, we have to remind ourselves, there's this very special reason why America since 1776 never created an MI5. We don't have a political police. We don't have an agency that's job is to spy on Americans. You have to go to a very special court. You have to have really good proof that there's something suspicious happening before we'll allow you to spy on an American. Hillary bought that right. And last thing, Drew, this is the tip of the iceberg, because you know what's a bigger scandal than even this? The unmaskings.
Oh, the Samantha Powers thing, yeah.
When a UN ambassador puts in more than 200 requests in 1 year to unmask US nationals caught up in surveillance. She's not even part of the intelligence community, Drew. That's outrageous. So 2018 is going to be a mighty interesting year.
Where do you stand on the Jeff Sessions question? I know there seems to be at least some tension between Trump and Jeff Sessions. I've always liked Sessions, but and now he says he's looking into FISA abuse. Do you think he is going to get to the bottom of this? Do you think this is something that interests him and has caught his imagination?
I promised the president when I left that I'm not here. I'm here to support him from the outside. I'm not going to attack individual members of his cabinet or his administration. I'll say, look, Jeff Sessions put his reputation on the line, the first senator to endorse candidate Trump. He's an honorable man. He's a good patriot. I'm not sure he understood the scope of the corruption at DOJ. Because the Obama administration politicized everything. I mean, they politicized the IRS.
I know.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. But the worst of the worst, and I know this from the people inside, the worst politicization was DOJ. DOJ is a viper's den. Under the Obama administration, it became a weapon of the White House. So his job is a massive job, but I believe he's committed to getting to the bottom of it. But the problem is, Drew, our base, those who voted for Trump, are very impatient. I understand their impatience, but to do these things legally, because we believe in rule of law, takes time.
Right.
So patience.
So you're backing him. You just feel it's going to take time. Fair enough. I kind of feel the same way. I mean, I've always liked the guy. He's never shown any kind of sign of dishonesty or bigotry. So I think it's worth waiting for him. The final thing I have to ask you is about this indictment of 13 Russian trolls, which it does seem to me to be blown out of proportion, but we don't want these guys messing around with our country. The big hit on Trump over this is that he doesn't seem to be angry about it. He hasn't come out and said, that rotten Putin lied to my face. He always, it's funny. The Trump administration has been very hard on Russia. They have been much harder on Russia than the Obama administration. There's just no question. There's no comparison. But the rhetoric isn't there. And that, that's part of what the president does is speak from the bully pulpit. Is Trump missing an opportunity? Is there some reason that Trump doesn't see that he should be hammering Putin a little bit?
I'm not sure I'm the best person to ask. My father was imprisoned by communists at the age of 20. Yeah. So, I don't love former KGB colonels. So, yeah, it would make my day to have the president rail against the Kremlin. But the president's a pragmatist. He knows this is bad, what they did. But again, it's very important to understand when he said, I'm not interested in making new enemies, he means that. He doesn't want to kick a hornet's nest unnecessarily. And in the case of, be very cautious here. This is my area. When you're talking about information warfare and subterfuge, sometimes the best actions are covert, right? If you really want to deal with this, you do it in the classified arena with black programs, with classified programs. I can assure you, we can't discuss it here. Guess what? We're doing stuff about what Russia is doing in America right now as we are, making this show. Does the president have to get on a soapbox and do it? I'd like him to. Does he have to? Not really.
Sebastian Gorka, always good to talk to you. I'm glad you're down at Cpack. I know it's a fun place to be. If you see Shapiro, send them home. We need him.
We need you here next year, Drew. Come on down.
All right, I'll talk to you again. Thanks.
Thanks, Drew.
I have to say, I always hate to give him questions in his wheelhouse because he's so good at what he does. But I think this thing with the Obamagate is just fascinating. We'll talk about it more when the news quiets down a little bit.